Hola amigos, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Emma Bennet. I write contemporary romance and the occasional children's picture book, and I'm a UK-based writer. Today, I am so excited to be joined by the amazing Virginia Heath, Regency romance writer extraordinaire. Hello, Virginia. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
I apologize in advance for the amount of quizzing that you are going to have. I have a lot of questions of my own, so we have had questions sent in from other people. So let's just get those out of the way, and then I can kind of, actually find out what I need from you. Now, the first time that I was aware of you, to be honest, because I hadn't read any of your books, was either 4 or 5 years ago. 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning at a Romantic Novelists Association conference, I came to your How to Write a Sex Scene seminar.
Yes.
Yes. And it was amazing. And I immediately went home and found out more about you and read some of your books. So I am a huge fan. I'm guessing that you didn't choose the time for that seminar. I'm guessing that you would have rather kind of Saturday around 4.
Yes, I absolutely would have. But I think the thinking at the time was our session would wake people up, which I think it did.
It definitely did.
And actually, it was quite good to get it out of the way. It was a big session. I think everybody at the conference seemed to be in it. But yeah, in my previous life, I was a teacher, a history teacher. And so teaching is kind of like that little thing that I still do on the side. Mostly teaching writing nowadays, though.
Sure, lovely. But yes, what a way to meet you. Right.
My apologies.
No, it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. So the first question is a really nice introductory question. So when did you first start writing?
Oh dear. I've always wanted to write. It was like right from a kid, the creative writing in school, anything like that, I loved. I think I gave my first serious bash at it when I was in my early 30s. Wrote one book. It went nowhere. It was a contemporary. And then in my guise as a history teacher, quite by accident, I got asked to write some history textbooks because of something I'd done in a school. So I actually started, I cut my teeth writing, really. My first published books are history textbooks. And then a couple of years later, I don't know, I just become a bit disillusioned, not with teaching, because I love teaching, but disillusioned with all the nonsense, the politics and everything within it. And I never had time to write, teaching such an all-consuming job. So I did something quite brave. And I think I was 45, 46, and I quit my job and decided I was going to write my novel. And at the time, it was, we've got 2 kids. My daughter was about to go to university. So I had this 2-year window before she went to university, and I needed to earn the money to send her there. And so I gave myself 2 years to get published and managed to do it in 18 months. So.
Wow. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So do you still do any of the history textbooks or anything, or is that completely in the past?
No, I don't. My teaching now is I teach adults writing. I'll do things. It's something I can dip in and out of. It's not something that, I've done a bit of it in America and stuff like that because I have an American publisher, so as well as a UK one. So I'd mostly teach writing now, but I first started writing probably at school. Is the short answer to that very rambling question.
So the next question was, have you written in any genres other than Regency? So the history and the contemporary romance. Did that contemporary romance ever find a home, or is that still languishing in a drawer somewhere?
No, it didn't. And to be perfectly honest, I think it deserves to be forgotten on the hard drive that it in the previous computer that it is. I was learning before I got published. I mean, I make it sound like that 18 months was very kind of fast and rapid. I actually wrote 4 books in that time. And it was book 4 that finally got published. Books 1, 2, and 3. I mean, 1 is laughable, absolutely laughable. So the contemporary. But I am writing. I've written a Victorian. Lillian and the Irresistible Duke, I believe, is a Victorian. And I'm currently writing a contemporary rom-com. So we'll.
Ooh, and are you going to have a different pen name for your contemporary?
No, I think I'm going to stick to my pen name because one thing I'm known as is rom-coms. I mean, even you can probably see them behind me. Even my Mills and Boon covers, they were all got a bit of a rommy-commy thing in them. So no, I won't be changing my pen name. Especially, I mean, if I show you one of the covers of my.
Yeah, I mean, they're very rom-commy. They're lovely.
Very rom-com, and they're sold on the rom-com shelves. So I'm not going to change my name. I will unless the publisher tells me I have to. But yeah, I intend to do it as me.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. And what are your favorite? Who are your favorite Regency authors?
Oh well, my first Regency was a Julia Quinn Bridgerton book. And so she's always up there. I didn't realise that the genre even existed until I picked that up by accident one day when I'd run out of things to read, which is odd for a history teacher. And obviously I love Tessa Dare. She's very funny. Evie Dunmore, I love her books. And Sabrina Jeffries, who I'm very proud to call a friend now, but she's a superstar. I've read absolutely everything she's written.
Right. Okay. I'm going to need to look some of these up.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to consume as much as I can at the moment, as many Regencies as I can, as many books about the period.
It was kind of like I saw that as my training course. So I very much recommend you go through the whole Julia Quinn, Tessa Dare, Sabrina Jeffries, Eloisa James back catalogue, because that's why.
Fair enough. Good advice. What do you think are the best and worst Regency romance tropes? I love this question. When I saw it, I thought that was such
I think romance tropes, they cross all of the genre. So I think my favourites are enemies to lovers, because you can get so much. There's so much tension and sparring you can get with that trope. My least favourite is secret baby. I've never written a secret baby. I've written accidental pregnancies, but I'm not a fan of the secret baby thing. It's just not my bag. Yeah, I like most of the tropes, to be perfectly honest. But I always my favourite books are all enemies to lovers. Every single one of them. Because I just think that they're, great. Yeah.
I love that too. I was just the other night I finished off finally the second season of Bridgerton, because I'd read the second book. I was watching the second season, and that is just so well done with Anthony and Kate. I really loved it. And there's a point at which maybe everybody's watched it. I don't know. I'm not wanting to give anything away, but there's a point that Anthony cries, and it was I was sat there and I was like, that is just so good. That point at it, that they've crossed over and he's finally realized how much she means to him.
But I think there's this misconception that people back in the day were very uptight with their emotions, and maybe they were publicly, but they still experience them inside, and they still experience them in private. So I think, a hero that cries is a wonderful thing. And I think they did do that really well. I preferred season 2 to the first season.
Yeah, me too. Daphne kind of annoys me a little bit. She's just such a goody two shoes.
Yeah, I think both characters. I think the Bridgerton series was finding its feet in that first one, but I think it was much better in the second one.
Yeah, it was excellent. What is it that draws you particularly to the Regency period?
Oh, I think the whole of the 1800s, as a historian, as a history teacher, I think the thing that drew me to it initially is actually, bizarrely, it's going to be the national curriculum, because the national curriculum in schools say that you have to teach that whole Industrial Revolution period. And everything available in all of the textbooks was so dry and so boring, I couldn't cope with it. So I went digging to find out, like, actually what was going on. And it was as a teacher that I discovered what a fascinating age it is. There's such a mine of things you can play around with for plots, because you had an industrial revolution where there were no machines to there being factories. You had an agricultural revolution where they closed in fields, played around with the breeding programs and stuff like that. And then my absolute favorite is there's a social revolution and a medical revolution, but there's a social revolution where people go from, the lower classes start wanting more and wanting the vote and things like that. So I think all of that kind of it's a real bubbling cauldron of change, the 1800s. So as a period of time, I just think it's fascinating. And then on top of it, you've got the glorious fashions of the Regency, and the men in the breeches and the boots. I mean, and then of course there was the seminal Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy. There you go, sold. Yeah. Any more?
Yeah, where do I sign up? Absolutely. And what are your thoughts on the Bridgerton Queen Charlotte phenomenon? Why do you think it's kind of just been so crazily popular? And obviously, part of it's the sex scenes. Let's be honest. I think that's what sold it to a lot of people.
And the very attractive people that they have in the parts. But I would also say I think there's been an interesting change in people since the pandemic, and they want colourful and joyous, and the world's not a nice place at the moment with everything that's going on. And I think going back to a slightly simpler time, but doing it so sumptuously as they do, it's a glorious thing to watch. And I like the way they've played around with history, because at the end of the day, they're not promising to do a gritty historical reenactment. You want that documentary. What they're doing is they're giving you fiction. They're giving you some of the history, some of the way people behaved and the strict society rules. You've got all that, which is brilliant to work within. They play around with the fashions, they play around with the colours, they play around with race and ethnicity and the way society was structured. But I just think it's really well done telly at the end of the day, and it's wonderful escapism and always a glorious romance through the centre of it. I mean, I watched Queen Charlotte, I binge watched it in 2 days, and I have to say I absolutely adored it. So well done. I think actually the Queen Charlotte is my favourite of the 3 so far. So
okay.
I know. So I'm looking forward to Colin and Penelope, because it's getting better and better.
Yeah, that is lovely, isn't it? But we've got to, like, Benedict has to kind of get himself sorted out first, doesn't he? So we'll have to wait properly for Colin.
Oh no, they're doing Colin next.
Oh, are they? But what about poor Benedict?
Well, I think he's got to wait. Benedict's book was my least favourite.
I haven't got that far.
Yeah, in the Bridgerton trilogy, it was my least favourite. So I'll be interested to see what they do with that. I've heard rumours that they're perhaps going to mix it up and change it to a kind of male romance, but it'd be interesting to see if they do.
That would be really cool. And then they need the other ones to kind of grow up quickly so that they can carry on doing those. So they need a few more years under their belt. So you actually are published by 2 different publishers. You are published by Mills and Boon, which is kind of how I know you, but you also have an American publisher. So is your writing process different for each of those publishers?
Yes and no. My voice is my voice. If you pick up one of my Mills and Boons, and then you pick up one of my Americans, you'll know it's me writing it.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably more humour in these. These are published by Headline here in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
The difference in them is word count. The Mills and Boons are 75,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
My ones for St Martin's Press are 100,000, maybe a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So you've got those extra words to play with. And Mills and Boon, that you keep very tightly on the main characters in the romance.
Yeah.
And while I still do that with my other publisher, I am allowed a little bit more leeway to have other characters in it that I've never done things from their point of view, but they're in it and they're kind of like a rich source of the story. They're kind of integral. So it's the same me, just maybe with a little bit more flourish and embellishment around the sides. But yeah, same writing process. The writing process is basically, I can't plot for toffee. I look at a blank screen. I have a germ of an idea, and I'll think something like, "Oh, wouldn't it be funny if I don't know, I had a man with a fake fiance, like I did Never Fall for Your Fiance, and it's a bit of an important to be in earnest kind of affair.
Right.
Wouldn't it be funny if he hired someone to play his fiance for the sake of his mother, and you could just, and that's all I start with. And then I kind of, this sounds bizarre, but for me, I see the story in my head like a film. And so I type it live as I see it. And then it will stop when my brain's run out of ideas. And then it's kind of, my brain's got to work out where it's going next. And then I'll start again. It's the most bizarre process. I've not met anyone who does it quite like me, but yeah. And I know if I've gone wrong because the film doesn't start. And I end up going back and editing, and I know I've gone wrong somewhere. So I delete, oh God, I delete so many thousands of words in every book I tell you, but that's my process. And it's worked so far.
So you always work completely like linearly. You don't kind of, add in a scene and then. Yeah.
I have to write it completely chronological. I can't go ahead and write a scene and then come back and stitch it together. It has to be completely chronological, like I was watching a film.
Yeah, that's I have to do it chronologically as well. With my first book, I was kind of, that's a cool scene, I'll do that, and I want to write that bit, and it took so long, it was ridiculous, and I ended up in such a mess.
Because things don't fit then, because you learn your characters as you go along, don't you? And by the time you get to that scene, you go, well, actually she wouldn't behave like that, and he certainly wouldn't have said that. So your whole thing, it's for me, that was a complete waste of my time.
So how does that work then? Because when I go to my publishers with an idea, I need to provide them with a synopsis that they can read through and kind of sign off. So if you don't do any planning, I guess they just trust you. They're just like, this is Virginia. This is what she does.
Yeah, with obviously when I got my first contract with Mills and Boon, the book was written. So I was able to write a proper synopsis then. After that, I've got to be honest and say it, they've been brilliant. They just leave me to it. They just, I get a book contract, I have a deadline, and they know it's going to be a Regency, but they never quite know what they're going to get until they get it. So they've been absolutely brilliant in that way. They just trust me to do what I want. And then with Martin's, when they bought Never Fall for Your Fiance, they bought the whole series based on this book, which was finished at the time.
Right.
So again, I was able to do a proper synopsis. And they've left me alone for the second two books. And then they've just signed me up for another 4-book series. And they bought that on 4 blurbs. And the first 3 chapters of the first book. So they bought the whole series on that. So yeah, I've been really, really lucky in that way. That
you're not lucky. You're very good at what you do.
Trust me to do my job.
Yeah, there's no luck there. They know.
Well, that's very nice of you to say, but it doesn't feel like that when I'm kind of like lost in a book thinking,
Yeah.
where's it going? But yeah, I feel very blessed to work for two such lovely publishers who've, you know, Mills and Boon. I will always write a book a year for Mills and Boon, no matter what else happens, because they picked me up off the slush pile, and they've kind of supported everything that I've done. And St Martin seems to be doing the same, so I'm happy.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. So I'm hoping to be able to submit to Mills and Boon with a Regency romance. So my plan is this month I am planning exactly what I'm going to write, because I am a planner. And then for Camp NaNoWriMo next month, I am going to be hopefully writing this Regency if all goes to plan. But I am scared because I've never written one before. And I think what really holds a lot of people back is the historical aspect, is how much do you put in? Because we were speaking before we were recording about the Convenient Marriage and about Georgette Heyer in general. And what I've been finding with her, I mean, obviously she wrote a long time ago, but I find the historical detail a little too much in there, because she throws in so many little terms and you don't know what they mean. So it kind of stops the story. Whereas I definitely don't find that in your book. I find that there's a world that I'm immersed in, but but I'm not having to stop and try to work out what's going on. So how do you manage to get that right?
I think, as we were talking about before, Georgette Heyer, like Jane Austen, like William Shakespeare, were writing for their time. And Georgette Heyer was writing those books 100 years ago, when there was no such thing as television, when there was no such thing as film. The world has moved on, and people expect to be entertained almost straight away. And I think it's very important to be mindful that while you're writing a historical, you're writing for a modern audience. So you have to walk that tightrope of, making both your hero and your heroine appeal to the modern reader. So the first piece of advice I would give you is to make sure that you give her agency, that she's not just somebody who embroiders or something like that. I mean, she can be somebody who just embroiders, but she needs to want more. She needs to do more. She needs to have a bit more gumption than the Heyer heroines or the Jane Austens perhaps did, because that's what readers want. They, I think when one of the books, one of the writing books says that when a reader reads a romance, they want to be the heroine. So I think that it's really important to make sure that your hero and heroine are two people that your readers are going to like. For the hero, I think, for me, I've certainly never written an alpha hero in my life. So I think you need to find somebody who is prepared, because you're talking about a different society where men are in charge, but you need to write a hero who's prepared to flex on that, and prepared to be wrong, and prepared to listen. And you need to write a hero who in his head has all the same insecurities as a modern person would have. Because the internal stuff, when you write a Regency, I think people are people no matter what century you're in. I think the second thing to remember is you can use the history in two ways. You can use it as a plot point. So I wrote one of my books, A Warrener's A Tempter, is set during a smallpox epidemic. So I used that as a kind of, the knowledge and understanding of the doctor and the heroine helping him to drive the plot. But like you say, you can't overwhelm people with stuff. So in a lot of stories, it's a backdrop, a bit like in a school play where you've got a painted backdrop. It's a backdrop in the same way as it is in Bridgerton. You need to know you're in a different world, but that world mustn't take over. It the romance, the characters, the story, that's what needs to be front and center, and the glorious Regency stuff is behind. And I also think as well, research. It's important to know your history. It's important to know what you're talking about, because there's nothing worse than reading a Regency, often done by someone who isn't English, often done by somebody who isn't edited in England, where they'll put things in where the history's wrong, and because the history is wrong, for someone who knows their history, like you say, it pulls them straight out, or if you don't understand something. So I think you use your history sparingly, like a sprinkle of salt. 90% of my research doesn't get used in a book. You just need to know it, so your characters know it to make them believable. But I think people do get bogged down in the history and feel that they've got to explain it. You're not writing a textbook.
That's the thing, isn't it?
No, you're not writing a textbook. You're writing a romance between two people who happen to live in 1815, for example.
Have you got any resources that you'd recommend for somebody wanting to write a Regency romance? So I've been stocking up on books.
Stocking up on books. Let's see. I've got there's a couple that are really good. I'm just seeing if they're right there on my shelf so I can show you. One thing a good old map of London is a good idea. You can buy facsimile ones. I've got one here, excuse me, standing up. But I've got one here. The Jane Austen map of London.
Right.
And this is a really good resource, because if you are setting a Regency somewhere, the street names have often changed.
Right.
London have often changed. So you can kind of, with a magnifying glass, you can read those things. So when you're looking at places like Mayfair and stuff like that, you can just make sure that your story's accurate, that place existed, and things like that. So that's a really good resource. I've got there's one called Georgian London by Lucy Ingalls, which is a very interesting kind of background into like everything from entertainment to money to shopping to, it just gives you that kind of, it's a nice thing to dip in and out of.
Right.
And then what else have I got on my shelf that's wonderful? I've got a really good, here it is. Hang on, sorry.
It's okay.
I find this Brother Cadfael's Herb Garden.
Okay.
And I've got here Milady's Book of Household Secrets, Recipes, Remedies and Essential Etiquette. And then I've got another one here, Lavender Water and Snail Syrup, Miss Ambler's Household Book of Georgian Cures and Remedies. And they're really handy because there's always a character who's got something wrong with them, and it's a nice little thing. It's one of the little sprinklings of salt you can put in to say, well, you're suffering from a headache, or you've got a cold, you should take this, and play around with some of the medicines and stuff. So I think they're really good. I tend to obviously I've got a history background, so that's helpful. But there are plenty of books on like that sort of time period, the 1800s, of what happened, and a good history book with a timeline of what happened, because it was such a time of change. Voting, medicine, like I was saying, what sort of like steam power and stuff like that. There's all sorts of different things you can play around with, and a good timeline kind of helps you, if you've got an idea, realize whether or not you can do it. I wrote what was it called? I forget what my books are called. I'm writing books.
You've written quite a lot of them,
bear with me. Let me just, what is it called? How Not to Chaperone a Lady.
Right.
I've got the hero is working on steam engines, but his dream is to make a moving steam engine that carries passengers, but it's set too early. And so I read some fascinating stuff thanks to a timeline of like the timeline of steam. And right where he is the time when they were tinkering with steam engines and they were mostly blowing up. And I thought, well, that's just too good not to have in a story.
Yeah.
You have this man who keeps making things that explode. So yeah, I think you use it to drive the plot or as a backdrop, but for nothing else really.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, I think I'm going to be definitely going and ordering definitely the map. I think that's particularly good, and I love the idea of like the herbs and the medicines as well. Thank you.
Another tip is if you've got them traveling somewhere, is obviously they're traveling by coach.
Yeah.
And I worked out that a stagecoach, like a post coach, travels at the same speed as a bike. So if you've got them going, say, from London to Brighton,
you can look on Google Maps
how long it takes by bike. But then you've got to factor in that overnight there were highwaymen and footpads. So they always went to an inn when it hit darkness. So then you can work out how many days of traveling it takes to get there.
Sure.
Because people get things like that really, really wrong. Like, oh, we'll just pop to Brighton for an afternoon. No. It's a 3-day journey.
Sure. Oh, brilliant. Thank you. I know that there are websites that you can kind of look up how long a journey would take. You can set it for a different time period and things, I think, but I've never actually looked at them. But that does sound quite fun.
There is quite a cool website if you're stuck for names. I think there's one if you type in Regency name generator. You can keep pressing buttons and it'll give you some like suggestions for like first names and stuff, which I think is quite good. Surnames I tend to, just because it amuses me. Titles and surnames I tend to pick from Essex, which is where I live. So I'll pick titles like the Duke of Upminster and the Earl of Ockenden and that just amuses me. Viscount Hadley. Redbridge I think I've had. Yeah, anyone who's like in the Essex borders I tend to use, but that's quite fun too.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so helpful. Okay, well, I think we better call it a day because I actually have 2 boys that I need to deliver to an A-level exam in a little bit, and that would be I know. Poor things. It brings it all back, doesn't it? Like when they're sitting their exams, you just remember what it was like. But thank you so much for agreeing to come and be grilled by me. I really, really appreciate it. If you are interested in reading some of Virginia's books and you haven't already, like where have you been? All the links and stuff to where you can find them will be down in the description below. I really hope that everybody watching has enjoyed this, especially if you are thinking about writing a Regency, and especially if you are for Camp NaNoWriMo. Make sure that you get in touch and make friends with me on the NaNoWriMo website because I like to have buddies around there. It's nice. Virginia, have an awesome rest of your day and say hello to Trevor the dog for me.
I will do, who also is featured in one of my books.
Right, so now I'm going to have to read all of them and find out where Trevor is.
He's in The Disgraceful Lord Grey. That was entertaining, getting a Labrador into 1815, but I'll leave that with you.
Okay, well, thank you again. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye for now.